set up. Hi, Lee. Lee, where in the world are you? Hi, YouTube. Okay, so we're live on YouTube and on Instagram. Hooray, they both seem to be working today. I really like to have both because for those who can join me live, sometimes Instagram is just the easiest, right? Because we're all kind of there on our phones. But for those, hi, Shauna, who miss it live, then you can go back and watch in perpetuity on YouTube. And it seems to be working pretty well. So as you come in, say hi, leave a little comment. Hi, Chris. Good morning. Oh, yay. Okay, Brandon's here too. Awesome. Well, let me just do some housekeeping just as people are joining us. I'm trying to get things a little more squared off here too. Okay, so both of the comment threads look like they're working today. Yay! And it's Tuesday in the middle of a lot of Pisces energy, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little like, oh, foggy. Lee, it works, yay! I have tons of notes to try to stay on a linear path today because I do feel like there's a lot to offer you. Oh, yay, it totally works in your time zone, Lee. And Becky, hi, good morning. Lots of notes, but let's just do basic housekeeping first as people are joining us and hopping in and out this morning, okay? Today is our typical Tangent Tuesday. On YouTube, I did give it a title because I have to. And it's really about healing again, because that's kind of my shtick. That's what I do. And the 4 steps in which to do it. We're going to do a little recap of the spectrum of healing and then break down a few more pieces. There's been a lot of breakthroughs for people lately, and it's really beautiful. And I always want to make sure that every opportunity is used for you all to hear it in a way that makes sense. Good morning, Paula. And in a way that Shawty switched over, that makes sense and gets grounded, because the purpose is for us to have an understanding at a spiritual and cognitive level that we can implement in the physical to make progress. So if things are not clear, then what's the point? So let's just do the housekeeping stuff first because it's Tuesday and that's what we do. I said the wrong thing last week. I think it was on Tuesday and I don't know. I do feel like in Pisces season, I should just go to bed and see you when it's Aries season in the spring. So it's not Mercury retrograde yet. Mercury just entered its shadow. And for me historically, and therefore for the unicorns historically, the shadow phase can be more intense than the actual retrograde itself. And I am not down on Mercury retrograde. I'm aware of it, that technology gets a little rougher at times for us, that communication can be a little more interesting. I had a coffee date last week that I think I stuck my foot in my mouth about 4 times. That's not usually my MO. And it's and travel is a little quirky. So it's just always a call and a reminder to slow down, rethink, reread, make sure you edit, maybe even multiple times before you post, before you send. It doesn't have to be awful. It's just a call and a time to slow down. I find that Mercury retrograde and Mercury retro shadow, the 2 weeks before it actually turns retrograde, to be extra intense because Pisces energy is ocean water and it's depth. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday in the live tarot reading, the weekly, that it's just like we're just swimming. Everything's underwater. Meanwhile, Mercury's in Pisces. So Mercury doesn't like it in Pisces. Mercury likes to move quick and like go from thing to thing, and it's underwater and it's slowing down to station retrograde. So if you're feeling like a little uninspired or unmotivated or just foggy, that's totally okay. That's kind of where we're at. So I think last week in the weekly, it was kind of about being the snowplow and just slowly continuing to move through, right? And this week, it's like she's reading a book, just kind of take a step back, listen to these lives, maybe listen to them again. Make sure you're listening to your tarot readings and watching those videos. Make sure you're doing the self-care and the doing, which we're going to get into today, because things are not going to feel, Pisces season is like not being on the speedboat. It's like you're swimming to the depths and you're often asked to dive to the dark unknown of the ocean to try to pull things out and to receive and to hear. So I said the wrong thing last week because I was reading my notes, and part of the notes where it says shadow, I had written over it with something else. So I just read it as retrograde, and that's not the truth. So we're in the shadow phase. It's already messing with me. Hi, Charlotte. So there's that. So there's just this murkiness of this week that feels slow. Pisces wants to, it's just all water. Pisces energy can like to hide, right? Loves a little bit of alcohol, loves a little bit of weed, things that make things a little foggy, watery, that take the edge off. So make sure you realize anything that you're doing to take the edge off might be constructive, because Pisces is so sensitive that we tend to take things personally, that anything like alcohol or or like pot, it's a shield on the heart chakra. So I'm not completely down on it. In moderation and in balance, it could be slightly constructive if used medicinally. I hope that comes out the right way. That if you're using alcohol as to numb, right, then you're numbing the heart chakra. But if you're using these things to put a little buffer in between of like, I just need a tiny breathing space. And I'm talking like 4 to 6 ounces of alcohol. Like this is like a glass of wine, a little tequila, like this is something, it's like neat and small, and using it as a blessing and a medicinal piece to give a little bit of space and buffer, because Pisces season can make everything land really personally. You think it's all your fault and everything's awful and everybody hates you, and what somebody said, they didn't even mean it that way, and they don't even think that. So as you guys come in, say hi, write a little comment, throw up a little emoji so that the thread's going and you guys are here. That way, when you ask questions, it seems like it moves things along better. Like I see them sooner. So there's just that. Pisces season, we like to hide. I say we because I have a Pisces moon, so this is emotionally how I can navigate. Because things tend to feel so loud and so personal, and it's so psychic and so open to receiving, that it can be a bit of like Netflix binging also, just to of really heading into dream time and fantasy, and not being based in reality. So just watch out for that. Again, in Pisces season, I always feel like, hey, hi, Liz, that this is super emotional piece of it. So then we're looking for self-care pieces where we can navigate that. And there is a very fine line between hiding from it, buffering and thwarting it, versus managing it, then getting into it in constructive ways of what triggered the emotions, where is that coming from, what can I learn from it, how can I work with this, and how can I use it to the benefit of the highest and greatest good of my soul expansion at this point, right? So there's so many pieces to it. So Pisces energy should just be understood like any other energy. This is the season that we're in. Meanwhile, Mercury is there. So the messenger, and where we have maybe felt where things were so clear and like, yeah, right on, because all the planets were going direct. Technically, all the planets are still moving direct, except that Mercury's slowing down. And Mercury does it 3 times a year. It's just like, okay, weather's changing a little bit. Do we need an umbrella? Do we need a raincoat? Do we need to just stay indoors? Pisces tends to want to stay indoors or in the bathtub or in the shower. So just know that is part of the self-care piece of what are we dealing with? What's the balance of Pisces? What's the imbalance of Pisces? So the imbalance of Pisces is that we like to hide, we get hyper emotional, then we'll soothe in escapism. There's the word I'm looking for. But the constructive part is that you can hide in constructive ways, right? Self-care, like go take a bath, go take a beautiful shower, get to the steam room if there's somewhere where you can get in steam, right? In water. Hydrate a lot, extra. Pisces loves to sleep because it's dream time and astral plane and dreams and emotions. And so take a little nap. Can you do a 10, 20 minute little nap in the middle of the day? If you're not good at napping in the middle of the day, I'm terrible. You can do some binaural beats or an ASMR, listening. Yeah, dream time is super intense right now. So I'm not sleeping super well because I feel like everything's so loud. Meanwhile, I've been like, can you guys turn it down a little bit? They're not so interested in turning it down right now. What Pisces season is interested in is getting messages through, is letting ahas and breakthroughs happen. And so that's what we really need to welcome, is comments. Oh yeah, it's totally introvert time. Absolutely. I think that I mentioned it in this month's newsletter about it being that, and I may not have. I know it came up recently in the, I think it might have been last week's weekly tarot. Yes, Pisces season is, it kind of interesting. It's very much introvert season. It is still winter. Like we don't head into spring until March 20th. 19th, 20th, depending on where in the world you are. So this is not time to go out and go socialize. Now, that being said, if you're in the ocean and you're swimming, you may come across a few other fish, right? So this is kind of like, I feel like Pisces season is a really protective time, especially for introverts and high psychics and high sensitives, that make sure that the people that you're meeting up with are, sensitive and similar, because like I said, I planned a coffee that, well, it could have gone either way, but I just felt like it was awkward. And I was like, oh, that's because they're not in the same ocean, so to speak, right now. And that's okay. But it can feel like this, like trying to communicate with people, and it all just lands a little too close to home, or in these really like pokey ways where the person didn't mean it in any negative tone. And we kind of take it that way. And it wasn't necessary. Like we actually weren't supposed to take it that way. That wasn't something we really needed to examine. It just got a little hyper emotional. So yes, Pisces season, because it's still winter, is time for introverted introspection, a little bit of personal lockdown, not super social. Mercury's headed into retrograde. So this is a time of reevaluation, re-editing, rethinking, looking over things again. I'm seeing some shifts too for people of like the path that they're headed down. They've been headed down. Everybody's still heading in that direction, but there's some shifts. Like it's kind of like things are kind of like they're starting to swim instead of head this direction, So yes, it's very much an introverted time. Next bit of just housekeeping basics is yesterday I also said I really want, in the weekly tarot on YouTube, I said that I thought I was going to do a sale for the 3-card offline readings because it's Pisces season, because the veil is so thin, because the messaging is like, at least for me, and I think those who have Pisces sun, rising, or moon in Pisces season, it's like so loud and wonderful. Like this is a time to ask questions because you're going to get answers. And I went to go make it, like post the sale and put it on the site. I'm not sure if I can do it or not. I'm traveling. I'm blocked out like 2 days because I'm gone doing some things. And then I have shooting when I come back. And I don't know that I have times to offer you all to book in this season. This year I made a commitment to only seeing sessions on Wednesdays. And that I need to be respectful of that for my self-care. But I'm still going to go see if I can maybe add a day or two, like 2 days. That would probably be 8 appointments, that if you all are interested in them, maybe send me a message or make some comments here. If you guys want, these will be 3-card readings offline for $33. And I may be able to offer them on 2 Fridays because there's no time on the Wednesdays and I'm gone in this Pisces season. So if it's something that you all are interested in me doing, let me know. If there's a want for it, then I'll figure it out for you guys. If there's not, then we don't need to worry about it because then I'm just messing with the schedule. Okay. So if you all want 3-card readings at $33 in the next 2 weeks, then I need to go figure out where to make that happen. They're all offline readings. So you won't meet with me. You'll send me your question. I'll record it and then send it on to you. If you're not interested in it, then I won't do it. Okay. So those are the basics. Like I said the wrong thing last week. I kind of said the wrong thing yesterday, but I still want to offer you all these readings at this really inexpensive rate. If you're interested. If you're not interested, we don't need to do it. Okay. So questions, comments thus far. And then we'll go to my next bit. Everybody okay? Yeah, okay. All right. So in the last few weeks, we've been talking about the mother wound specifically, healing through it, in relation to Chiron moving from Pisces into Aries, okay? Chiron is officially in Aries now, and in this transition, so it's a recap of what we've been talking about for the last few weeks, that Chiron has an odd orbit, okay? It doesn't move in a regular shape or path. It spends 1.5 years in some signs, but in Pisces and Aries, it spends 8, nearly 9 years, and then moves to the next. So we are closing up a giant cycle now, which all the feels and all of the emotional piece that coming out, it's amplified by Pisces, but it's not only Pisces, okay? So as a collective for unicorns, we've really been working through the mother wound and what that means and how to look for it, in particular for those with really awesome moms, because that's a harder one. Like, no, it exists, and we need to dig for it a little bit for the collective highest and greatest good healing. When a planet transitions, it doesn't mean it's a hard stop on those lessons. It doesn't mean we're finished fully with mother wounds. But it does mean it's tapering out as the highest opportunity to find them, understand them, and to heal them. Okay. And as Chiron has moved into Aries, Aries is very masculine energy. It's very naive. It's really a wonderful, like a fireball of energy. It's the warrior and the athlete and the mover. It's the mover and the shaker. It's the starter. Okay. But as Chiron moves in, the messaging that I've been getting and sharing with you all is that this is instigating and initiating the father wound healing. So, but this is an 8, nearly 9-year cycle. So it's like not going to happen in these first, I mean, maybe it will, awesome. But we're finishing up mother wound stuff, and then we're stepping into father wound things. So we're going from primarily feminine energy into a primarily masculine energy. The spring is going to bring more of that. But what these two things with Chiron are really doing is showing us, teaching us, and offering us so much balance in solar, lunar, masculine, feminine energies, which is the goal. This is the ultimate goal, is to find these balances within ourselves. And we finding them right now through the healing of the mother and the father wound. Biological first. Then if, like me, you have an extra set of parents, I'm adopted. We don't disregard those experiences if your primary caregivers for the majority of your formative years in your lifetime were not your biological parents. They're like the add-on to the story. But you always want to go to the biological first, because we're 3D, and this is how the DNA and the soul connection and bringing through your soul first functions, and the connections to that. So we're stepping into this masculine energy, and we're stepping into the father wounds, and this is offering us so many more of the feels, right? We're like dealing with all of like our beginnings in this physical incarnation. Okay. So remember that our parents are couriers for our soul. They didn't create them, but we have agreements with them on the other side. And again, with the mother wound, hey, Elena, it's, we're with our mothers their full lifetime, because women carry all the eggs they're ever going to have at birth. With fathers, it's a little bit differently, because sperm is constantly being produced. So you're not with them as long. Not to say they are not as important. It's just different. From the biological perspective and very primal perspective, fathers are to teach independence, really. And so there's already this independence in how a child is formed. So what does this matter? There's some bits. I'm going to look at the right. So we had it from mother to father wounds, and this is big stuff. So again, it's not going to be finished with the mother wound because Chiron moved out of Pisces, we're done with that. No. Things take as long as they're going to take with each person and with each soul. It's the awareness of the support from the universe to ignite this healing, to uncover and to allow these topics. And then we take whatever time we need and how to heal, right? And allow it to unfold as it needs to. But we've got extra support for the universe for it right now. And like Jill mentioned, she's scared of that father wound. Like, man, they're just there. And this is the thing about fear, right? So I posted about fear, because fear and anger, we're going to talk about, we've been talking about it. We're going to keep talking about it. When it comes to mother wounds, they tend to be in the shape of unworthiness, shame, guilt. I don't make this stuff up, and I am not judging one gender or the other. This is just how it kind of brews, okay? Father wounds tend to come, and they bring a lot of anger, which is really sadness that hasn't been processed and doesn't know how to articulate itself. So when it comes to father stuff, it can also come with independence issues and financial, because in this primal sense of fatherhood, of being, I don't know why I'm hedging this. Sometimes I just lose words that I can feel it, but I'm trying to find words to express it. That fathers are here to teach independence and also to provide. From a primal perspective, I'm not saying we are locked into those gender roles. I'm not saying it's the right thing, but this is part of the DNA that hasn't evolved yet. Whereas mothers are the nurture caregivers, right? So the wounding of the mother often looks like unworthiness, shame, and guilt. That's that subconscious programming, which often manifests in not being able to manifest finances and abundance and wealth or love. Father wounds are just anger, mostly. Not to demean it, but an independence, capacity to step forward in the world, to feel confident in yourself and to feel safe. Again, in a capacity to provide for yourself or in a financial means. So both of it has to do with finances, because your root chakra is like your grounding and your rootedness and your sense of safety in the world. So it can come from either side, but yeah. So is that clear? I don't see a lot of questions. So Lee, good. So like a lot of tarot readings are making sense. So we are hopping this line. I also want to say in this video that so anybody who's really a member of UnicornWellness.Studio and has been working with me for a long time in movement, in the tarot, in meditation, in privates, when we connect and we start, the longer we connect energetically, the stronger these messages make sense to all of us. And this is really starting to happen for members a lot. So I'm not trying to overwhelm you all with information. These are pieces, right? If you're really on a mission, right, for your highest unfoldment in this lifetime, then you want all the pieces that you can have to make sense. So these, like we just said, like a lot of her readings she's done in this past month are making sense. And this is the point, is that the universe throws puzzle pieces. We have our sign symbols and omens. And as people who are trying to heal and as seekers, right, as witches or as light workers, like we're looking for the things to make the puzzle pieces make sense for our highest unfoldment. But we don't always have all the right information just yet. So these weeklies and these tangents, I'm trying to give you the other pieces, to make all of the pieces make sense. So we've moved out of the mother wound. That doesn't mean it's finished, but we have actively stepped into the father wound. So if you look at it from the US perspective, like politically and culturally, our whole political system and the last election and the rise of the feminine, like this is all on purpose, right? And so when you aim to balance something that has been at an imbalance for so long, sometimes you have to like upset the whole apple cart, right? Like there is this time of unrest and purging in relation to feelings and emotions. Anger is that upset of the apple cart. And last week we talked about how so many of us who are seeking healing and who are seeking understanding our wounds and understand that we come from toxic environments, we've really stayed away from anger because anger has been scary and unsafe, and that we don't want to be angry, right, in the world, because we understand that we're souls and that we're not skin, and that we understand the empathy of everybody's doing the very best they can. And man, that goes wrong sometimes. And we really don't have all the information, or we're not integrated in our intellect and our intuition quite yet. We make poor decisions. That's okay. So, but what anger, is this loudness, is that, wait, hang on. Yeah, I mean, sometimes the puzzles are so big, okay? So we look at things as those who are seeking healing and seeking balance and seeking to help. One, the collective is a reflection of the individual. Personal is political. There is no way around that. Political is personal. So when we can take these big topics and really work with them personally, then we see the shift as a collective and understand that the work on the energetic, emotional, plane, it takes longer to produce itself and to show itself physically in the world. So this, yeah, right, it's been a long time coming. That comes from us. So if we're not doing our individual work to evolve and to heal, it does not show up in the collective. It can't. Like can't. That's not a great word, but it's true. So the benefit of healing yourself is that it is an act of political activism to heal yourself and to try to get things into play and to understand the stories of your family, your DNA, your experiences, the ancestral line and the ancestral wounds, and then the historical collective. So it's all of these bits of individual, that the healing of the individual is the most powerful thing you can do for the collective. And because it's like, what should we do? We want to see the world change. What can we do? Yeah, there are some functional things, voting and donating, protesting, showing up. But it's all here. It's all this work. It's all this emotional work. What triggered me? Where did this come from? Where did it come from in my family? How can I break these wounds that keep us in toxic places? So anger, to those of us who have been seeking healing and who come from toxic environments and who understand toxic masculinity before it was real, hashtag term, that we've stayed away from anger because anger feels unsafe and we don't want to participate in the unsafe, right? Wrong. So because we're headed into the father wound, right? Males in the room, just work with me here. I love you. And females, we got our own stuff. So that anger tends to be a very masculine, solar energy. It's really loud sadness. Anger comes because there's a build up of not feeling heard for an extended period of time, or cognitively not processing what's actually bothering you, and it just explodes. Because as we know, a body is a vessel, right? It's the vessel of our soul, but it's also just a vessel. It's physical, it's limited. There's an end point to it. It can only hold so much. So if you keep filling it with toxic things and don't process emotions, eventually it's going to blow. I mean, you could just see this in an American culture with the amount of gun violence, mostly from young Caucasian males. So we want to dig and we want to understand so that we have healing on the collective and work at an individual level. So it's all of these pieces, right? Men, as a general term, aren't taught to emotionally communicate, and we got to take, as mamas, we got to take some of that blame. Like, we didn't teach them. We just assumed, boys will be boys, and just let them run rampant instead of pulling them in and going, what hurts? What do you need? How do you feel? How does that make you feel? How did you respond? Your friends acted like this. Did you talk to them about it? Do you want to talk about it? Okay, no talking. How about some journaling? How about some sharing with me? Because it's got to go somewhere. So as we've entered Chiron into Aries, all of us, every single one, regardless of how you identify, right? Regardless of the physical parts, we are all starting to deal with the wound of the father, okay? And so we start with the biological father, and then if there is a nurture, caregiver, stepfather, or adoptive parent that we've been with for an extended period, we have to tack that onto it. So how to identify that, right? Because it's not in some ways not as simple. The mother wound, you've been with them their whole lives because you're in that little egg in their womb. In the mother wound, you look for where are the places they experienced hurt, right? And limitation and lack. And we're told to be small, to be quiet, to sit down. No, that's not for girls. You can't do those things. Those kinds of experiences, because you absorbed your mother's experiences on that cellular energetic level. Because we're not with our biological fathers that long, as sperm is produced really quickly. Partially, you have to look at where their head was at, right? In that moment. Is this a committed, loving relationship and in, where they wanted a child, or was this like totally random and angry, or, where did it come from? But then you look at mostly the inner child and where your father was not present or supportive for you in that inner child space. As well as what were the limitations of your father's emotions? What did they learn from their father? What was the setup here? Was there a career that they really wanted to have and they weren't allowed to because they needed to provide because there was a war? So the father one gets a little trickier, okay? This isn't necessarily how, I mean, it goes hand in hand, but it's not necessarily how the father hurt you. This is where wounding, the word wound kind of fails us a bit, is that things are layered, right? You can have the wound of the father of what was hurt and how, did they leave? Did they go away? Were they taken too soon? Literally, functionally. Did they lose all of the money in the household? On a personal level, I'm adopted. My biological father didn't know about me. It was kind of like a one-night stand sort of thing. He was married. Then my adoptive dad went to federal prison and lost everything financially for us as a family and was physically absent. So there's so many pieces, right, in my father wound. So if you get all the pieces, but then you need to look at, and it looks like it's paused on Instagram, but we're still going on YouTube, where the hurts of the father, the wounds of the father, and we're back on Instagram. So just when you're looking at the father wound, it becomes a bit layered, okay? That yes, you want to look at the things that happened to him and the things that happened to you and he in that relationship. But in the father wound, go to the inner child. What did you really want out of your dad that you didn't get? That's where it gets simple. That's where the simplicity comes in of identifying the wound, because wound is a little limiting in our language. And so we can look at the trauma, but then we really need to go to emotionally, what did our soul need that we didn't get from this person? But then the deeper bit of why couldn't they give it? Where was that? So pause and then look at notes, because I do have things set out in a more linear way, and it's Tangent Tuesday. It kind of heads off on its own tangent, and then we bring it back in and try to keep stuff being forward in it. So anger is going to be a big thing for us as a collective in the next 8 to 9 years, but not in this explosive way, in understanding how to navigate it. Anger isn't scary. This is what I wanted to say for those of us who've been seeking healing or were in really toxic spaces and toxic relationships. And we've been like, oh, I don't want to do angry because that's not healing. Yeah, it is actually. You need to be able to vent your anger. Anger points to where the passion is. It absolutely points to where the hurt is, and it points to where someone needs to be heard. They're in such a loud, angry space that they just want to be heard. So they've accelerated it. And we see it as like they snapped and they went nuts. And you're like, dial it back. Okay. Why don't they feel heard? Where's the root of this? Why do they feel the need to get so loud and so reactionary to this one event or instance? Why do we personally feel the need to go to that place? So as a parent, I've shared this before, that when I get into my mom yelling, where you snap and you're like, oh, that was not the proud moment, totally normal. But it's usually because there hasn't been enough self-care time or enough downtime to replenish, to give, or you really genuinely don't feel like you've been heard. You've repeated it 100 times in the last 4 years and just are yelling because you've been saying the same thing. So anger is really constructive, but we have to learn how to work with it in a constructive way. And for those of us who it like feels really unsafe to be angry, it's just a process. Like journaling is one of the best places because it doesn't land on someone, but you're emptying your container of anger and frustration, and it's not being judged, and you just do it. Now what happens is you'll start to self-judge, and then you start to edit your journaling. Okay, don't do that. Just get it out someplace. Anger needs to be vented so that it diffuses. So again, only one container. Think of the physical body as the container. You really can only shove so much in energetically, right? Because energy is neither created nor destroyed. So if it's all filled with things that need to be processed, the cap's going to blow at some point, okay? Individually or collectively. And you just keep shoving things in, shoving things in, shoving things in, okay? So venting and anger is really important because it diffuses it and it pulls things out of the container in a constructive way. And we want to learn how to do that safely and constructively. So we're not aiming at other people, we're not hurting other people, but we're expressing our frustration, because anger points to what we want to protect, what we wish we had, what we are sad that we lost, and what we're angry about that we feel is unfair. Okay, so it's a great dial of like, what do I need to go help with? What do I need to produce in the world? How do I need to support more of that? How do I need to grow it and create it? But we do have to spend more time creating beauty and supporting and protecting what we love rather than warrioring and battling against the things we don't want. So this is the fine-tuning line of anger and love that we're learning of how to balance things, of like, just because you don't like something doesn't mean you have to go to war at it. It's actually a little bit not the case. You have to go to protect it and uplift it and support it and create more of it, because where focus goes, energy flows. So if it's all toxic, that we're trying to aim toxicity at toxicity, it's a little bit somewhat like Voldemort and like Harry Potter's wands. It's like they just met each other equally and kind of feed each other. But then you've got to be able to get the beauty and the love to overpower rather than battling, fighting. I hope that makes sense. So anger is important, and it's going to become even more important in the next 8-9 years as we learn to navigate it constructively. Constructive ways of venting through journaling is great because it doesn't land on somebody. And if you can get your personal, like conversation and judging it out of the way, then it's really useful. Therapy can be wonderful in this way of just getting things out and not feeling judged. Sometimes that doesn't work though, because you're sitting with someone else and you just inherently feel judged. So you need to make sure it's a safe space that it can come out. But if you find somebody that you're real fit with, that you trust, that can hold space for you to just listen, it has to come out. Okay. Recognize that in your loved ones as well, that if you can be a space holder, not offer judgment and not judge and not offer how to fix it, just listen and let it diffuse. Because sometimes anger just needs to come out so it can be diffused. It's steam, right? And there's that piece of it. Having besties who can hold it, like great. You need someone or a space who can hold it without being offended, without it bouncing back at you. Like don't, and make sure can you just listen to this? Or please no, I don't need you to solve it. I just need you to listen. Because that's kind of where it goes wrong, is when people try to solve it, then we feel judged. We're like, I didn't need you to solve, I just needed to get it out, right? And a side note to all of this, as we go through our mother and our father wounds at these higher frequencies and higher levels, understand that if you are a parent, your children are going through these also. So that's not about judgment on self. That's about how do we help them navigate this? How can we all heal together? What can we offer and support? And depending on their age and stage in life, that's going to look like a lot of different things. So I think one of the most beautiful things, my mom, who was a highly abusive person, but that wasn't the only part of her, that she said was, my sister and I were 8 years apart. My sister is her biological child and I was adopted. And at one point, she just said, you guys had two different mothers. She as a woman, as a female, as a mother in the world, were in two totally different spaces when she had her first child and when she had her second. And I thought that's actually the most brilliant thing ever. Because she's like, there were 8 years, like there was so much experience and shifts and changes in that time period. She was like, you guys essentially had two different mothers. And I think that's really important to understand too, if you have siblings or there's been sibling frustration, or in your own children and the age distances between your own kids, understand that they're each getting something a little bit different from you and their biological fathers or their father, right? So there's just to give permission, right? Because there's no perfect way to heal and there's no perfect way to understand this, but it can be really powerful to look at your children in this way. So if this last few weeks has kind of instigated some stuff in them, especially the boys in our lives, I just need to say that I'm not trying to leave, again, the women out. Honestly, I feel like females are a bit stronger, or if you identify as female, and that we're going to get through it, and that we are, as a collective, we rise together, and that we are more productive about sharing our stories. And there's more ease in us trying something and seeking self-care and self-love and healing. And I think this is where those who identify or are, as men, that boys falter a little bit here and could really use our help. So that's not, again, to diminish one over the other. This is where Chiron is going. This is the healing that is instigating itself. So how do we support it for the benefit of ourselves individually and for the collective at its highest and greatest good. Okay. Okay, I'm looking at the time. Questions, comments. Hi, you guys. Hi, Kayla. Okay. So, okay, because I said I would do this, I want to make sure that I get to what I said I would do in this live as well. On Instagram, I posted a picture of a 9-card reading that I did, and I'll do a better post of it this week at some point. But I wanted to share it with you all because Pisces is psychic and it's water. Water is ultimately healing because we're being called and initiated and instigated and ignited for so much healing in these last 8 years and in the next 8 to 9 years. This layout kind of came to me last night and I thought, oh, I'm going to share that today because it's really helpful. So the picture I posted on Instagram has 3 cards across in 3 rows. And the questions that you ask with each one is how can I help myself this week? 1 card for that. Okay. How can I help myself this year? 1 card for that. And then the end card in that layout is the spirit in which to move through things. So you can do this layout. I did 3. How can I help myself this week, this year, and the spirit in which to move through things? Then how can I help my intention? So the intention can be so different for all of us. This could be a business, and like, what do you want to manifest this year? Is it healing? Is it business growth? Is it a new career? Is it a love interest? Is it some healing with some relationships? Like, which part are you wanting? Is your big intention right now? So how can you help yourself this week with this intention? And then this year question, I want you to think of it as, what is the most pivotal, important thing for me to do for myself, my intention, or the collective this year? Like, what's the most transformative thing I can do this year? And so you have this year and then the spirit in which to move through it. And then the last question, so it's really 3 questions. How can I help myself? How can I help my intention, whatever goal you have for this year? And then the third one would be, how can I help the collective? And so this week, it's like, how can I help myself this week? How can I help my goal this week? How can I help the collective this week? It's just another way to look at things. There's a million different tarot layouts, but they all serve a purpose. And visually, the way it's organized may really help us make a breakthrough. This may be more powerful because it's kind of a grid, like a block of things, rather than our 5-card, maybe. But this gets down to the individual. Okay, so we really want to look at what's the most impactful thing I can do for myself this year. Internal self-healing, completely self-centric. Okay. Then what is the most impacting thing I can do for my goal that I've set this year? And then what is the most powerful thing I can do for the collective this year? And also for this week. Now, if you wanted to keep doing these and do them every single week, right? Like if you got a little journal just for these and you did this original one of for myself, for this goal and for the collective, and you have this week, this year, and the spirit in which to move through it, and then you had a weekly, that might be really cool to track this year to see how it moves through, because we need to have large scale things to keep an eye on for healing. But we also need, like, what do I just need to do this week? Right? So these can also help turn healing into a very different perspective and take it out of the cerebral so much and really put it in the practical of what do I need to explore? What do I need to do? Hi, Sue. To really get pieces to move forward for the greatest good, at my soul's highest expansion. How do I burn karma? How do I drop my baggage? How do I get rid of some of this shit? And how do I cut ancestral ties and wounds now to move forward so that the collective benefits from this in the long term, and therefore I benefit and we benefit before the collective benefits. So that's a win-win, right? Okay, so that tarot layout I wanted to share with you because I feel like it was just so strong visually as a grid that I thought it might really work for you all as you're sorting through. In particular, the father wounds and this year as we move out of mother wounds and head into father wounds. And again, they're not just all hard stops of when they start and finish, but I just think this is really clear in it. So there's a picture of it in my Instagram stories already this morning. And then I'll post one in the feed later. So for those of you on YouTube, you can go see it later. Okay. So what time is it? We get up at 15 minutes. This is about the right time. All right. So in the spectrum of healing, again, this is kind of what we revisit over and over in these lives, is that we have a wound, we have a trauma, okay, that happened. In order to heal these things 2 through 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, have to happen in order for it to heal. But 2 through 5 can happen in any order, right? So 2, would be to feel it, to grieve it, and to mourn it. And I find that most people either think that they've done that or have skipped this step entirely. And this often, although you would assume would be the second step after something has happened, tends to be way down here, because often these traumas and wounds have happened in childhood or at a place when we cognitively couldn't process it, or verbally couldn't express it, or emotionally just could not handle it. So the feeling, grieving, mourning part of it must happen. It's the biggest piece of healing, but often it happens out of order. Okay. Then the cognitive acceptance of what has happened, the cerebral awareness, eventually the forgiveness, and perhaps the gratitude for it happening, because without these experiences, we wouldn't be who we are. And knowing that everything happens for a purpose, and there is always the silver lining out of it. How do we alchemize this into a lesson that allows us to help, teach, support, and give to the collective at the highest and greatest good of all involved, so that really every awful, terrible thing that has happened can serve a purpose of love and empathy and healing, if we allow it and if we're willing to do the work. Forgiveness is kind of this end piece of it. And then that allows for alchemization, for the impurities to be taken out and for gold to be left over, right? Meaning that the hurt has gone out of it, that we can understand at a more global spiritual level, and then integrate that, because that is the blessing, and let it be a lesson and let it serve a higher purpose to move forward. So this is the spectrum of healing that we're dealing with. We all want to get over here. We're all here in some way, shape, or form. Oh, good, Leah. Oh, okay, the tarot. Yeah. So this, again, wanting you all to have all the tools, right? So if we understand the spectrum of healing and the things that need to happen in order for healing to happen, understanding that we're human, they happen at different rates and at different times, and everything in divine timing, but you all are here, or you're members of UnicornWellness.Studio, or you're listening to this afterwards. So you're seeking healing and information. And you're like, I wasn't seeking, I just stumbled here. Well, then the universe is calling you for this information and for seeking and for healing. So you go, okay, great. These are the things that have to happen. How do I do that? Okay. And again, this gets into, this is why I teach what I teach. This is what I needed. This is what I've seen in clients. Are there other ways to navigate this? Sure, there are. But I would also say no. There are different ways to navigate these steps, but these steps have to happen in order to get through the spectrum of healing. Okay. So for healing to happen, there has to be a cultivation of self-love. And I think we hear that. We've heard it for generations and we go, yeah, okay, I get it. But how do we actually do that? And what does self-love actually feel like? And what does it look like? In a beautiful way. So also hear this for you all. We've talked about this politically, as a collective in the US. Self-care. Self-love is developed through self-care. And self-care has been such a big term, right? Really in the last 5 years, that it now just seems kind of hot and kind of passive. It's just that PR marketing, self-care, self-care. It has a much deeper purpose, and it has a really exciting piece in our healing process. It has already kind of been dumbed down and a little muted because it's so used to sell product now in the last 5 years. Self-care is not about buying shit. It is not about an expensive face mask. It's not about an inexpensive face mask, okay? Self-care is really about creating boundaries of, especially Pisces season, man, this is the season to go to figure out how to create boundaries, especially if you have heavy Pisces in your chart, sun, rising, or moon, that Pisces don't know how to, they have no boundaries, which is why they feel everything. They feel everybody's feels and their feels, and there's no stopping the ocean. Like, can't put a fence on the ocean, right? So boundaries is the biggest piece of self-care. And that doesn't just mean I put a boundary up here and you acted snotty and you can't come past the boundary. Boundaries are about, how do I keep myself safe? Okay. How do I know where I'm a little extra sensitive and I don't want you tripping over that wire, or me like giving you the wire and pushing the button to set me off? Like, it's about boundaries, meaning this is all the time I can give this week. This is all of the attention I can give. I can't listen right now. I cannot help right now. No, I'm sorry. I don't have that energy or presence to give right now. So boundaries are the biggest piece of self-care. Because if you don't have boundaries, you're just depleted, and then you get to angry and sad real extra fast. Okay. So think about boundaries as being, again, we talked a lot about the vessel today. Boundaries are like, when you know so for those of us with autoimmune issues, we talk a lot about spoons, okay? And this is, or energy sticks. My kids call them energy sticks, but you check in with how many spoons do you have today? So there's a great little piece written about how to explain autoimmune issues, because we get tired and fatigued like really quick, and other people just don't get it. And it's like things that are normal for you all that would take one spoon, like take like 4 of our spoons. So it's like our energy is depleted. So you could think about it like a video game, like where the bar of depletion is in your body. This is the first, rule of boundaries, of like, you don't want to get past this certain level. So like for me as an autoimmune person, you could say, I can get down to 3 spoons, and then I know I have to have some time alone. I need a bath. I need to go get my nails done. Like I need some time out. I need to go journal. For those who don't have autoimmune issues, it's not different. Ours is just exaggerated. That you need to know where the line is. Like when you haven't worked out in X amount of days, you're going to blow up. If you haven't had a beautiful meal, at the right times, like you need to learn yourself. So boundaries is the first piece of self-care, of understanding where things stop. How many things can you say yes to? And then where do you need to start saying no to things so you're not just depleted, okay? And then it turns into martyrdom. So don't think you're helping anybody by saying yes all the time, because you're just hurting yourself and annoying other people, because then you're in meltdown, you're sick, you're agitated, you got nothing to give, and you are no fun to be around. So this is, this is like, boundaries is number 1 for self-care, okay? And that's a really general term, and I'm still working on the words to help express it. But self-care is anything that allows you to feel calm and centered. What brings you back to calm and centered? Self-care is anything that allows you to respond more often than react, okay? And self-care are the things that allow you to create, see, and make choices. Okay. And again, Pisces, we can be terrible at making choices because everything's swimmy, anything's possible. It's all creative and like wonderful. And so we can have a harder time. So this season can be harder at making decisions or setting boundaries, but it's the perfect time to figure it out, because this is like the hardest time to do it. So if you do things in a difficult, setup, like then you can really get a handle on it sometimes. So self-care generates self-love. This again is why I teach what I teach. But what is self-care? It's not buying shit. It's not, treat yourself. It's really not, because sometimes treating yourself is the least amount of self-care. Sometimes treating yourself is really bad on the bank account, and you don't have it to treat yourself with. And then there's guilt and shame associated with a treat and associated with your finances. So like, no, it's the things that allow you to create boundaries, that allow you to get to know yourself better. What do I need? What keeps me in balance? I used to really think a lot like, oh my God, I require so much self-care. It's a little embarrassing. I just had to get over that. I require a lot. I give a lot. I channel through a lot, and that's depleting. So I'm an introvert and a little bit of a hermit in certain seasons. That's just the way it is. I'm healthier for it. I'm happier for it. And the people, my family, is much more grateful for it, right? So I don't need to please all those other people I don't come home to. I need to please myself and the inner circle that I really have responsibility towards, right? And you all. So boundaries, calm, respond versus react. And the ability to create, to see, and to make choices. This is what cultivates self-love. Self-love is that feeling of I belong. All of a sudden you feel whole. We are created whole, okay? We are. Our souls come in whole. However, as a human and things and all the wounding and the trauma that happens, it's really hard sometimes to feel whole. So what self-care does is generates more love, a higher frequency, the feeling of wholeness, and the recognition and the remembrance of our soul's wholeness. So we're just getting back to our original set point, which is cool, okay? Oh, Kayla, go get on the mat. Brandon, I'm so glad. So then we go through, okay, so we know that self-care generates self-love and that self-love is the healer. Then how do we practice self-care if it's not about buying stuff, right? Listening to these is an act of self-care because what you fill yourself up with, what you're listening to, how you guide your brain to think, this is part of it, right? Because it changes the frequency, it changes the potential, it changes the possibility of what you can do and what can come to fruition and manifestation. But this is really what I teach on UnicornWellness.Studio. I teach self-care because my interest is in your highest and greatest unfoldment in this incarnation. And that means healing. So I teach really practical pieces, but they instigate, initiate, balance, and expand your healing capacity. So the ways in which to practice self-care, movement, right? So we all, workouts and movement. We have a physical body. Oh, good, Paula. Good, mama. Okay. So for those of you on Instagram, and if you just hopped on, it's going to cut me off probably in a minute, but it's mirrored on YouTube. So if you could hop over to YouTube, do that because we're just coming to a close, but I can use a couple minutes to close out on YouTube. And if not, if you can't hop over there right now, then you can watch it on YouTube anytime because it'll be there in perpetuity. Okay. So what we're talking about is, what generates self-love, because self-love is healing. Self-care generates self-love. What really is self-care? And then how do we practice and cultivate self-care? Okay, so movement is number one. We're a spiritual being having a physical experience. We have a physical body and a physical vessel. And I've talked about this a lot because this is my thing. Like our soul, this is our soul's home. This physical body, like it or not, is heaven on earth. This is the courier, the protector, and the vessel of our soul. So we have to have movement in our lives because we're a physical body. We are built to move in this 3D incarnation, like it or not. So you don't have to love movement. You don't have to be a fitness guru. You don't have to be a fitness junkie. And fitness is not wellness, okay? So all movement can be constructive and beautiful and good. And just like different foods are a fit for different people, different movement patterns can be a fit in a different way to help cultivate wholeness. But I teach movement on the mat that's really thoughtful, very healing, and is really more magical and Reiki infused than anything else to teach patterns of movement to integrate with the soul for healing in accordance to the moon cycles and the astrology, because knowing that different pieces of the astrology, different planets affect different parts of the body. So on the site, you just go and press play because I'm handling all that on the back end for you. That if I know we're in Pisces and we're swimming, right? This month has been all about the heart, the throat, and the third eye chakra. I'm pushing you all a little bit this month. This is not the most comfortable balance work we've done. This is about expansion. This is about we are in these deep waters for healing, and we have the capacity to hear downloads and to up our intuition and to really get connected to our heart and to speak our truths. So the work this month is pushing you outside of your comfort zone. Like it's not the smoothest. I've already gotten feedback. People are like, this feels clunky and I'm having yeah, you are. Because this is about growth and this is about transformation. And we're moving out of, we've moved out of Pisces with Chiron into Aries. So we're feeling a little uncomfortable right now. We've just shifted an 8-year cycle. So the mat this month has been about expansion and upper thoracic extension, but about getting these things to work together. Your intuition of receiving, your capacity to speak your truth in the world, to be loud and to take up space and to expand your heart. Because when you expand your heart, you're protecting yourself energetically. It actually doesn't put you at risk, even though it feels like that. This is a lot to take in, Brandon. I know that's one of my things. I get so much channeled through and I don't edit But I am trying to repeat. So for those of you on Instagram, go watch the rest on YouTube. I'm going to take a few more minutes on YouTube to close out. If you want to book a private session with me, tandygutierrez.com, or on Instagram, go to my profile. Okay. So yeah, it's a lot, but it actually is a little in some ways. So the reason I teach what I teach is to make it more simple, is to create simplicity in it, is that you go to the site, you press play, you do the movement patterns. It's cleaning out energetically. It's helping you physically. It's working with the emotional and the cognitive process of the physical body and getting you embodied and really loving and taking care of your body. So the second piece, in my opinion, is fuel. Again, because we are a physical body, it is required. Food, water, shelter. And I consider shelter the body. Okay. So fuel is one of those that maybe we put it last on the list, because I understand after years of teaching that it's one of the most emotional pieces to engage with, but it's on the site when you need it. And cracking your personal food code is really the way to do it. You're not going to fit into a slot just like everybody else does. You need to play with the foods, have an experience with them, nurture and fuel and bolster your body, and allow wellness to unfold. Like, we are designed to thrive, but our modern culture really makes that more challenging, and we've simply learned bad habits. So fuel is, again, required for healing at some point, because of the resonance issue of raising the vibration, because of how we tend to the physical vessel. This just goes hand in hand with the movement portion of it. And it's required. We have to eat in order to survive, So, but I don't put it at the top of the list anymore. I think it's amazing if you do it at second, movement first, then fuel. But my 41-day food reset, it does take 41 days to complete it. Then you have the practice of it afterwards, and you don't truly reap all the benefits for 3 to 6 months. You get a lot of benefits up front. I mean, anybody who's done it, they'll tell you, but it's a longer process. So kind of moved it to the end now, because it's just a little harder to step into. Okay, so movement, I think, is easy to step into, because we're a physical body, and we all kind of go, oh, okay, we know we need to move. I want you all to look at movement as healing patterns rather than a workout, and that you're working with the body rather than against it and trying to beat it into submission, because that's not the goal. The goal is to integrate the body and the soul, because again, the soul doesn't know the difference between the physical vessel and itself. This is its home. So the better we teach and tend to the physical body, the happier our soul is, and the more it is allowed to expand and to heal and to generate joy. Okay. So how do we cultivate self-care? Movement, fuel, meditation. Okay. And I want to put meditation / prayer on the same line. Meditation is when you allow divine spirit, God, goddess, whatever verbiage works for you, to speak to you. Prayer is when you speak to divine spirit, right? So I teach meditation on the site, but knowing that we all pray and we all ask for stuff, we want things. If you're a witch and you're spell casting, that's a prayer. You're putting your intentions out in the world. This is what I want. I'm putting it up to the ethers and the elements, So meditation and prayer, you have to connect to greater source. This is part of healing. So this is one of the pieces. How do you generate healing? It's through generating self-love. How do you generate self-love? By practicing self-care. What does self-care look like in practical tactics? It looks like movement. It looks like fuel. It looks like meditation. And then the tarot. So I put the tarot in because this is about self-evaluation, right? Meditation, you're connecting to something bigger than yourself. Tarot, you are definitely connecting to something bigger to yourself, but it draws it down and in to be about you connecting to you, so it can call you out because it's physical and tangible. It allows you to have some distance from things. It doesn't feel so personal with the information that's offered, that you can look at it and integrate it in a way where you go, oh, well, maybe I'm doing that here. Or maybe that's what this looks like. It's a method of self-evaluation that takes the shame and the criticism and the guilt that as a culture we have just ingrained in ourselves. So self-evaluation does not mean self-judgment. It doesn't mean shame and guilt. It means, did I act in my highest good there? I didn't know any better. Oh, that was not a proud moment. Okay, how can I do that better next time? And so the tarot, to have a practice of self-evaluation, is that, it allows us to work with the day to day as well as the soul and karmic level. So in the tarot, the suits of swords and wands and cups and pentacles, these are the day to day things. So when those cards come up, we're dealing with the day to day. Major arcana, this is our soul contracts. These are our karmic, issues to work with and to deal with, so that we know that we're always working at this 3D level and at the divine spiritual level. So balancing humanity and divinity is always the name of the game. So again, like as Brandon said, there's so much information, right? There's so much. But these videos and my repetition in these things in particular are meant and are being guided and brought through to help you, one, put the puzzle pieces together, to really connect the dots and to put the puzzle together so that it makes a clear picture for healing. But UnicornWellness.Studio, the point of the studio is absolutely to take the thought out of it, let you all be cared for. You all just show up and press, pray, and practice, and know that these things are generating self-love. They're teaching you how to practice self-care. And that auto rolls into healing and alchemization. Like, that's just how it works. And so this is why I'm showing up every Tuesday, and more often than that is because it's been very clear that this channeled information of like how to balance humanity and divinity, we're hearing one piece from a lot of teachers that we love, but my goal is to help you all integrate it in this lifetime for real healing. And like, how do we actually heal? How do we actually move forward? What does it look like? So we can listen. I mean, I've done it to a million spiritual teachers and read, the self-help books and have a tarot practice and have a movement practice, but it still feels all over the place. It still feels like puzzle pieces, like thrown all over the deck. We need a space for things to come together and connect and put together, where you feel like you've got some boundaries, where you've got the calm and the quiet and the capacity to explore and respond at your own tempo, simply by showing up, so that it takes the noise out and brings it in. So Tuesdays and even Mondays in the tarot, they get big, and it sounds like a lot of information, and it is. But remember that the goal is, one, with the astrology, is to have a heads up on the forecast of the energy, which is what we're doing, right? We've moved from mother wounds into father wounds. We worked an 8-year cycle. We're getting ready to work another one. That's what we need to be on the lookout for. Here's the umbrella you need to take, and you need a pair of gloves, right? But then the next piece is day to day. What does that look like? And how do we keep it calm? Press play on the site. I mean, really, UnicornWellness.Studio was a gift and a channeled message 3 years ago that, has come into fruition. Meanwhile, I had its first incarnation 6 years ago. Like, I've been teaching online for 6 years now, and it's had an evolution of its own. But the goal is to make it accessible, to have a community where it's not loud and noisy or confusing, and that where you can ask questions and feel supported and genuinely be in contact with each other and actually heal and make progress. That's it. It's a gift of love. So I want you all to use it. And most of you all are already members and subscribers that are here in the room, right? I'm reading. Ollie. Mama, I love you. Thank you. Oh, Brandon, thank you. And Chris, good. I love Tuesdays. I really do. I really look forward to them. And they're always a mystery to me too. I hope you know that. Like, I get up and I meditate and I take notes. And then inevitably, like right before I'm on with you guys, there's stuff that comes through. So it's a real pleasure. And I appreciate you all listening. Because if you're not here to listen, then there's no point in me running my mouth, right? The guidance for me is to run my mouth more, to speak loudly, that it's all about the words and the sharing. I've been teaching movement and working a lot of these and the food pieces for nearly 20 years. But this gift of messaging of spirit and the connection between the astrology, that's been about 3 years. And so it's a beautiful thing to see you all respond to it, and the amount of healing that gets instigated and initiated and actually comes at a quicker pace. It's beautiful to hear your breakthroughs, and it's a pleasure to hold space for it. And please know and remember that all the things I'm teaching and sharing with you really come from a genuine place of healing in myself. That the list of things that I have gone through, they have to serve a purpose. And I'm really diligent about that being the case. And the universe is very diligent about that being the case. So I just show up and share and try to talk you through things in ways that made sense to me that I didn't understand. So when it comes to anger, when it comes to mother and father wounds, this is the way that I understood it. And I wished somebody would have explained it to me in this way, because I read a lot of books. I went to a lot of therapy. I did, I've done one of everything, and it still didn't make sense until I understood it at the soul level with the astrology and with the practical tactics. So I really aim to be up ahead on the path with a flashlight to help, not to preach, but to share and to really just help instigate and initiate and support your healing. So there you go. Oh, mama. Yeah, well, the reality, Stu, is that we're all struggling souls, honestly. And for those who are seeking healing and really earnest about it, and I call us unicorns, right? That we're earnest in our healing and that we are full of hope and potential. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. I always say that UnicornWellness.Studio members they have to be of pure heart, because you just can't stay in this frequency if you're not. Like, you're just not going to do it. If you want a quick fix, this is not it. But if you're earnest and it resonates, this is your home. So you're not alone. Healing exists. That's the way we're wired. We're built to thrive. And part of this is a bit of a matrix, right? It's a game. So when we know how to play the right pieces, it makes it more fun and smoother. And then real healing and transitions really happen. And that's magic. That's the magic. Oh, good, Charlotte. That's it. That's just the goal. We're all in this together, but we are all on different parts of the path, right? And so the goal is to make it clear that for me, then it can sound silly and salesy, like, get on the mat, don't judge it, just go move your body, like, just do it. When you're ready, do the food reset. It'll change your life. And just press play on the meditation more days than not during the month, and go listen to the tarot. That's all you have to do, really, is show up, because your questions and your journaling and your personal practices and your personal ahas, they will come naturally. This is the flow, right? So if you know the rails of practice and the bit of structure, then the flow inside of it is life, and it's fun, right? But healing is not particularly fun for the faint of heart. Anger, sadness, it's like somebody pulls the scab off. So know that if you're in a hyper emotional state, Pisces season brews it, so does Cancer season, and Scorpio too, then you're in the right place for healing. And so this moment of like trauma emotionally, where you can mourn it and grieve it and be aware of it in a bigger way, is the universe saying, you're capable of holding this now. You're capable of healing this. So rather than putting the blocks up and how do I, shy away from it. So again, Pisces season sometimes wants to hide, right? And drinks too much and watches too much TV and often fantasy land. If you can find the balance of, okay, I need a little breather and a little fantasy and a little heart protection right now, and then I'm going to hop in with the wound and go, I'm going to really go there. What do I need to look at there? Where's my self-responsibility? What's the story of my family? How can I have empathy and understanding for them of what they did? Then there's the goods, right? Balance. It's always balance. Okay. So happy Tuesday. I love y'all. And I never really totally know what's going to come out of my mouth. It is a blessing of channeling that I'm just trying to get more and more comfortable with. So I just show up, right? Just like I want you guys to do. Just show up and listen. That's all. That's it. That's really, showing up is 99% of it. So, thank you. I appreciate it. So, Shauna, mama, you're welcome. All right, I am going to sign off, and I do have it in my calendar this week to be live, probably on Instagram, some shorter bits. I think tomorrow and Thursday. I'm gonna try, because I want to kind of recap the spectrum of healing again, and I really would like to go through like the self-care and what it generates. Plus, I'm going to figure out if I can be able to do that sale for you guys or not. So if you're interested in me doing 3-card offline readings for $33 in the next 2 weeks in this Pisces season, send me a message or comment. Let me know if you want them or not, and I will find a way to do it then. And if it's not something you're interested in, then even message me and go, no, it's okay. I don't really feel the call. These lives are enough. That's totally fine too. I'm traveling, then I'm filming. And if you are new to me and to the site, go use one of the promo codes. I'll have it below. It's always here on the YouTube channel for a 30-day guest membership. There's really nothing weird about it. You can cancel at any time. If you stay, day 31, it rolls over to a paid membership. So just know that. But you can cancel it any time. And again, nothing weird about it. Just go try. So this month, we're finishing up the Detox Your Brain workouts. This is really about, again, the heart, the throat, and the third eye chakra expanding and speaking to one another. This is to increase your intuition and also to detox low-level emotions and low-level frequencies. Same thing. So if you all, as members on the site, have had a lot of headaches, brain fog, a lot of ideas, or a lot of ahas and insight and really feeling like your intuition is amped up, this is what these workouts are geared to do this month. And again, it wasn't really for the faint of heart. This isn't our yummiest series, I'll say. This is kind of pushing you all towards expansion and growth in a way that may kind of feel a little bristly. And that's okay. That really is the purpose. I'm sorry. As the coach and the teacher, I have to push you past your comfort zones sometimes. March, I think you guys are really going to like March. We're going back into the root chakra, and I'm teaching root camp, sort of just to play on words. I'm not aggressive in the movement at all. And so that's something to look forward to because we're almost there. Okay. All right. I'm going to log off. I love you all, and I will see you next Tuesday, and check in on Instagram the rest of this week. Okay. See you soon.